Up until now, we've had the luxury of being able to encourage a startle recovery response in the puppies without worrying about true fear. As the puppies approach 5 weeks of age, however, the game changes. The puppies develop a true fear response and can go through a mild fear imprinting period, so more caution is warranted.
So, important part to recognize during the socialization period is something we call a fear period. And that's a time of particular sensitivity where we find puppies are very susceptible to something called single event learning, where one single frightening experience can affect them for the rest of their lives.
These fear imprinting periods present themselves as sudden spikes in fear, usually somewhere around 5 weeks, and then again much stronger at around 8 weeks old. Fear normally levels off at around 10 weeks, and this will become the puppy's normal sensitivity to fear as an adult.
This emotional sensitivity that they have between 3 and 12 weeks of age that allows them to retain positive experiences, to learn that things, beings, places are safe, also gives them that sensitivity to experience fear and to learn that things are scary and dangerous. So they can be particularly sensitive to negative experiences as well as they are sensitive to good experiences. So you have to find a balance.
This means, as dog breeders and puppy owners, we have to make sure that our puppies are getting all the enriching experiences, as much exposure as possible, but always we need to err on the side of caution and make sure that our puppies don't have any really bad experiences. So beginning when the puppies are 5 weeks old, you may begin to see fearful reactions to things that the puppies had never been afraid of before. Here's Rocco playing happily in the living room at 34 days. He's just 1 day shy of 5 weeks old. Now here's Rocco 2 days later at 36 days old. He's been playing in the living room since he could walk, and he's suddenly afraid to come out. Now here's Betty at 34 days, happy as a clam. 2 days later, just like Rocco, she's suddenly afraid. Especially if you've worked with your puppies a lot, you may really not see an obvious fear response at 5 weeks old, or you may see it come and go so quickly that you're not even really sure it happens. But what you have to realize is, even if you've worked with the puppy a lot and condition them so well that they bounce back really quickly, the underlying process is still there, that the puppy is in a sensitive fear period around this time. So you should proceed accordingly and with more caution than you were before. The puppy should continue to visit with other friendly dogs in the household. But now that the puppies are sensitive to fear, the encounters need to be structured so that the puppies feel safe. And in order to feel safe, the puppy has to feel he's in control of the situation. Here, Rocco is horrified by his aunt and grandmother because he's totally exposed and has nowhere to hide. Just as you provided high places for the big dogs to get away from relentless puppies, you should provide low places where the puppies can escape from overenthusiastic adults. Give the puppies a low table or chair that they can retreat under. Let the puppy take it at his own pace, and don't try and lure or force him out. Once he's comfortable that he can retreat if he wants to, his confidence will build quickly. It's important to keep developing the puppy's ability to recover from fear by introducing challenging and startling things on a daily basis. Especially at this stage, you don't want to induce a huge fear response in the puppy. A tiny startle and recovery, like Betty is showing here at 36 days old, is perfect. If the puppy is not recovering almost immediately, you need to take it back a notch and start with less scary things. Keep presenting scary things to him, but just not quite as scary. You want to see an almost immediate recovery. Here, we're putting down a folded exercise pen with a tarp over it. The unstable, crackly surface is somewhat scary, but the puppies enjoy the challenge and begin to play on it almost immediately. All except for one, that is. Rocco is terrified of the tarp. Because he's been raised to be an enrichment seeker, he really tries his hardest to overcome his fear, but it's just too much for him. The fact that Rocco showed more fear than his litter mates on the tarp does not mean that he's going to grow up to be an abnormally fearful adult. What it does mean is that he's probably more sensitive to fear imprinting during this critical period, so we have to be very careful that all of his experiences are positive and give him training which will teach him to cope with his fears. So we're going to help Rocco overcome his fear of the tarp by introducing him to something that's crinkly like the tarp, but not so scary, like this baby wipe container. And then work our way up to using the tarp. Yes. During this peak time of the socialization period, puppies value social interaction very, very highly. I'm using social interaction, praise, petting, and play to reinforce Rocco's action of touching the scary object. Notice that I do not try to coax Rocco onto the tarp. That's awfully good. I remain impassive until he makes a brave move, and then I shower him with praise and affection. In this way, I'm reinforcing the behavior of interacting with the tarp. If I cheerleaded him when he was afraid and not touching the tarp, it might seem like a nice, encouraging thing to do, but in fact, I'd be reinforcing the behavior of being afraid of the tarp. Seeing a puppy like Rocco, so pleased with himself because he overcame his fear, and knowing that you helped him overcome that fear is one of the best feelings you can have.
You did well. You did well on the tarp. You did well on the tarp.
There's some disagreement about how to handle fear in dogs and in puppies. One camp says that you should never comfort a fearful dog because you would be, by offering that physical comfort and social interaction, reinforcing the fear. And then there's another school that says that it's barbaric not to comfort a fearful animal, and they point to studies that show that comforting a fearful animal actually lowers blood pressure and does truly calm and comfort the animal. And my answer is they're both right. What we are doing is providing the puppy with very low levels of fearful experience. So in essence, he can be inoculated against the fear. If we comfort a puppy when we're giving them this little bit of fear and we don't allow him to overcome it, we would be reinforcing that fear and creating a fearful dog. You should never be presenting something that is truly terrifying to the puppy. And if something by chance truly terrifying does happen to the puppy, it would be cruel not to comfort that puppy. It would be wrong not to comfort that puppy. But other than those terrifying experiences, in our routine presentation of fear and recovery exercises, we should not be comforting those puppies because we want to teach them how to take care of themselves. At 6 weeks old, the part of the puppy's brain that governs reasoning is still relatively unformed. But even though his thought process may be immature, the underlying structure of his brain has almost adult capacity to take in new information and form emotional reactions to it. So in terms of being willing and able to soak up new experiences, 6-week-old puppies are entering their peak socialization period. They have the highest approach and lowest fear now. Even though their fear response has begun to develop, they still have very low fear and high curiosity. This is why this stage is referred to as the curiosity period. Now's the time to introduce the puppy to as many appropriate people as possible. So, when the puppies are 6 weeks old, we throw a puppy party. Despite the fun name, these puppy parties are actually carefully planned training and socialization sessions. If a puppy party is handled correctly, it can be a really great experience for the puppies and a great way to introduce them to a lot of novel stuff at once. However, I think you have to be very careful about how you structure the puppy party, and you have to remember that the social sensitivity that allows a puppy to accept something during the critical period from 3 to 12 weeks with as little as one exposure cuts both ways. It also will allow the puppy to imprint a fear of a bad experience in as little as one exposure during this critical period. So if you are wearing high heels and you reach over and have a pleasant interaction with the puppy's going to learn people in high heels are good. But if you step on the puppy with high heels, that puppy could potentially be afraid of high heels for the rest of its life. This is why I don't recommend puppy flooding parties. To me, having a house full of non-savvy dog people runs too high a risk of something bad happening to your puppy. So, again, I would say err on the side of quality versus quantity. If you happen to be fortunate enough to know a ton of really dog-savvy, great people, sure, invite them over. But if you're not sure, have fewer people over, or have one person over at a time so you can monitor the situation. I invite some of my best advanced students over to train the puppies on miniature agility equipment. The skills the puppies learn are not specific to agility. Each piece of equipment teaches them a life skill they'll need to be good companions. The bouger board is a square board with a small ball attached to the back of it. It moves when the puppies step on it and teaches them not to be afraid of unstable or wobbly surfaces. The dog walk is a little ramp which teaches the puppy to be confident when placed on elevated surfaces. The chute is a barrel with a tube of fabric attached to it, and it teaches the puppies to accept things covering their heads. The equipment is designed to be a little scary, so the puppies learn that mastering a new skill in a challenging situation is very rewarding. The party is also a great way to socialize the puppies to all different sorts of people. Things like facial hair, hats, and glasses are things that puppies must be exposed to when they're young, or they'll be frightened by them as adults. We have a great dinner after the training session, so the puppies not only get used to training and playing with new people, but get used to having a lot of people laughing and enjoying themselves in the house. The object of this training is that the puppy chooses to do each piece of equipment. This is about confidence building, and the puppy has to make the decision to do the equipment in order to build his confidence. You should never place a puppy on a piece of equipment or force him to do anything. That will only imprint fear and panic instead of confidence and control. I carry a timer to make sure the sessions are short and the puppies get adequate rest in between sessions. I recommend no more than 2 minutes per piece of equipment and 6 minutes training at a time. Okay, that's it for this round. Your goal should be that each puppy comes out and trains 3 times with about 15 minutes rest in between each training session.
Start with the fabric off the chute. Have a person stationed on either end. Once you can call the puppy back and forth through that with confidence, add the chute material on, but hold it open so the puppy can see out the end. You can then gradually hold the fabric open less and less until it's fully closed. Click and treat each step the puppy takes on the dog walk, especially for big-bodied puppies. You may want to use a spotter to keep him from coming off the other side. Alternatively, you could use your arm around the puppy as a safety net. Your puppy may not go all the way across in the first session, but that's fine. So long as you don't push the puppy past whatever he feels comfortable doing, his confidence will build, and the next time he tries, he'll do a little bit more. Begin on the downside of the board, where it will not move when the puppy steps on it. Click and treat the puppy anytime he puts a foot on it. Once the puppy seems to understand that stepping on the board gets him a reward, hold out for 2 feet, then 3, then 4 feet on the board. At some point, the board will start moving, and you want to click and treat that. Be ready, because it can move at any time when you least expect it. The lasagna's in the oven, the stage is set, so let's train puppies. At 6.5 weeks old, we bring the puppies in to have their hearing tested. Our choices of how we place the puppies and whether or not we decide to breed them as adults will depend on whether or not they have normal hearing. Not every breed needs to have their hearing tested, but conscientious breeders will educate themselves on the particular health issues of their breed and make sure they perform the appropriate health testing. It's not inexpensive or convenient to perform health testing, but doing so is an act of love for the breed, the puppies, and the families who will someday own them. We brought the puppies to see Dr. Noemi Bernier, a neurologist with Garden State Veterinary Specialists. Dr. Bernier spoke with us about the test for hereditary deafness, which is called the Bayer test.
We've got 4 male, 3 females. Anyone you know that is actually deaf? No. Okay. Hereditary deafness is mainly a problem with the cochlea, which is the inner ear. What goes wrong can sometimes be associated with coloring, lack of pigment, so blue-eyed dogs, or if they have a completely white coat, and also the merle coloring can sometimes be associated with the gene that causes deafness. There's been an association, but it's not always the case. What the Bayer testing does is, through this apparatus over here with the inserts, we send a 90 decibel click. That's what the puppies hear. And then we put those little recording electrodes on the puppy's head. It's a very small needle, and it's right under the skin. It feels like a little mosquito bite. It really is not painful. Acupuncture, it feels good. This is the earplugs that we use. And this is malleable, so you can really squish it, to insert it in the ear canal. And then it stays put. We'll put the active electrode where about the middle ear is located in the ear that we're testing, on the side of the face. And then same thing with the reference electrode, which goes on the opposite side, about the same level, the bulla. And then we have a ground too that goes on the top of the head, and that's to minimize any artifact. So this electrode will record the electrical activity that travels from the inner ear, the cochlea, all the way through the brainstem. And that's called a brainstem auditory evoked response. Each wave that you get is actually associated with an anatomical structure. Why this is useful in puppies with hereditary deafness is usually because they have a cochlear problem, and the first wave is usually associated with cochlea. The signal doesn't go through, so you get a flat line. And it's mainly useful to determine unilateral deaf puppies, because usually the bilateral deaf puppies will have a pretty good idea just with behavioral testing, clapping your hands, making loud noise, trying to startle them when they're sleeping. Unilateral deafness is impossible to detect without a test like this. I think he's good in both ears.
Do a lot of people Bayer test?
I let the responsible breeders, I guess, Bayer test.
By 6 weeks old, the puppies have outgrown their first weaning pen, and they're ready to move into a bigger weaning pen in the living room. The new pen is 8 feet by 12 feet, and it gives the puppies a chance to stretch out their legs.
Dogs have a